It's 9 a.m. in the high deserts of the western United States. Mariana Tosca, Marlene Dodge, and Shirley Puga are sharing a typical Tuesday together. A non-stop 18-hour drive. This is standard. Scalding temperatures, also no surprise. But then, there is something different about today. The rescue was just about complete. This is a point often reached, though never guaranteed, because a simple rescue does not exist when gambling with the income of the horse slaughter industry. Today, 6 horses will most likely be freed from slaughter. But one undeniable truth still plagued the minds of these women. What about the other horses in this very same feedlot? And more, what of the thousands of American horses suffering the same fate across our nation? What makes them different from any other animal raised to provide food? And in a world torn apart by war, political divides, and economic depression, why does a horse's life matter? In 1867, scientist O.C. Marsh, excavating rock structures in the American South, discovered a complete skeleton of what came to be known as the first horse. They called it Eohippus, meaning dawn horse. For millions of years, horses roamed free, extending their presence to most of the continents on the planet. However, nowhere on Earth has the horse been more bound up with the progress and identity of a people than in the United States. When our forefathers declared independence from England over 200 years ago, it was the horse that carried Paul Revere on his legendary midnight ride, warning the Americans of the English troops' arrival. The horse enabled early explorers and settlers to colonize the nation. It was with the strength of the horse that these early settlers plowed our fields and carried our products to market. The horse provided transportation, carrying firefighters to burning houses, police to crime scenes, and doctors to the sick. It was the horse that made the dream of westward movement a reality and bravely explored the unknown. The horse carried our soldiers into battle, often losing their own lives for the betterment of our own. Horses provided sport, recreation, and companionship to Americans. And in 1971, it was the horse that Congress declared a living symbol of American heritage and culture. Our history as a people is written on the back of the horse. Without the horse, we would not be where we are today. And where are we today? Most Americans are not aware of the mounting issues facing our American horses, and that with each passing day, the fate of our once invaluable companions grows more grim. These great equines, noble creatures once keystones to our nation's survival, are today considered a burden, or even worse, livestock. Cases of abuse and neglect have become commonplace. Overbreeding is leading to a rise in their slaughter for human consumption. And even our wild horses are finding themselves in an ever-shrinking habitat. The current collapse of the global economy is only making the desperate situation facing American horses worse. We set out on a mission to explore the issues surrounding American equines and to see how this once irreplaceable national icon has become expendable. Here is what we found.
In 2008, the National Bureau of Economics Research declared that we have been in a recession since 2007.
We're seeing one of the worst economies probably in any of our lifetimes right now. So it makes sense that there are going to be more horses that don't have a home that people can't afford.
When you don't make as much money, you can't feed yourself. Well, if you can't feed yourself, you're not going to be able to feed your animals. So what's the first thing to go? Dump the animals.
It is not only humans who suffer during times of economic crisis. One of the first things to go are pets. With the cost of feed and fuel rising, one of the most expensive animals to maintain is the horse.
Do you pay your electric bill and your groceries, or do you pay board for a horse? Because it's not just the board, it's the shoes, the feet, the vaccinations, the getting their teeth floated, the upkeep.
You know, it's rough. I'm a college student and live in Chino Hills, and he's out here, and I couldn't do it anymore.
Between the two of us, we just could not afford to pay the board anymore, and our fear was what's going to happen to Rio.
These fears are justified. Horse slaughter is a billion-dollar industry, once accounting for the fourth largest agricultural export in our nation. And although not currently legal in most of the United States, over 100,000 American horses are being shipped every year to Canada and Mexico to be slaughtered for the foreign meat markets.
T. Boone Pickens summed it up the best by saying it's America's dirty little secret. I think if you were to poll the nation, I don't believe that most people understand the complex issue of horse slaughter. Many Americans have no idea, because we don't slaughter horses in the United States for food, that they were actually shipping them overseas.
In the 8 years between 1997 and 2005, the American horse industry has grown from $25.3 billion to $39 billion, an increase of 55%. It is an industry that could solve this problem if it desired, but the only desire thus far has been to turn a profit. We are fast approaching a count of 5 million American horses that have been brutally slaughtered for foreign consumption. And what's more, 92% of the horses going to slaughter are in good health or excellent condition.
What happens all too often is that killer buyers who frequent most of the horse auctions in the United States will come and bid on horses, which they can resell profitably to slaughter plants outside the United States.
There happen to be 20 head of horses there. Most likely 15 of them are going to go to slaughter through your livestock auctions.
If the fact that horses are being shipped to slaughter does not garner attention, the manner in which these horses are slaughtered often does. Killer buyers will buy horses and load them into cramped double-decker trucks, where they endure thousands of miles without food and water, in conditions where injury and even death often occur. Once at the slaughterhouses, it is required that the horses be rendered unconscious prior to slaughter. The procedure is gruesome and inhumane. The captive bolt gun, which slams a metal rod into the horse's brain, will often improperly stun the horses, leaving them conscious when hoisted by their rear leg to have their throats cut. Likewise, in an even more gruesome traditional practice, horses in Mexico are stabbed multiple times in the neck with a double-edged puntilla knife to sever their spinal cords. This procedure, known as evernazione, does not render the horse unconscious. It is not intended to. Rather, it is only intended to paralyze the horse so that it can be easily handled, hoisted, and bled out, often while still conscious. From that point, they are packaged and shipped for food.
Different meat products, basically you have any kind of cut you can think of for a cow. If they got demand for steaks, it's steaks. Hamburger, they got their hamburger.
So the people who are sending their horses to auction or giving them away on places like Craigslist don't necessarily know that those horses are going to end up in the slaughter pipeline.
In this horse's situation, he's 6 or 7 years old, he's very young, he has no major health issues, it's just a neglect on the owner's part to feed the horse.
We are a culture filled with people that when we're tired of something, it's not usable, it doesn't bring something to us, money-wise, whatever, we dump it.
When he was a yearling, he was registered, and then as a 2-year-old, he raced on the track. So he has registration papers, he's a running quarter horse, so we're gonna do some research and figure out what his actual name is.
In Modesto, California, on a small lot with no food and minimal water, we found this innocent creature. Abandoned for 2 months, all he had to fill his stomach with were toxic plants that caused damage to his gums, liver, and brain. We drove him across town to a veterinary center where he would be nurtured, rehabilitated, and nourished back to health. This horse rose from the ashes of his terror and was aptly renamed Phoenix.
This is definitely one of the worst cases that I've seen. I've seen a lot of skinny horses, but I think that he is the skinniest one that I've seen. For a horse to be like this just because he didn't get food, it's not acceptable.
Are there benefits to the practice of horse slaughter? Those in support of it believe so. Proponents for horse slaughter argue that without it, there'll be a flood of abused, abandoned, and neglected horses just like Phoenix. However, all current research findings suggest that this is simply false. After California passed their Anti-Horse Slaughter Act in 1998, there was a curious finding. Along with a 34% drop in horse theft, there were no correlating increases in horse abuse or neglect. Likewise, equine cruelty investigators reported that horse abandonment and abuse cases actually dropped during the temporary closure of slaughter plants in the early 2000s. It is not simply an issue of dollars and cents. It is a question of values. The horse is a living symbol of American heritage, culture, and freedom.
The whole United States was built on the same thing that they desire, freedom, a life of self-determination.
Today there are about the same number of wild horses as there were back in 1970, except now half of those horses are being held in long-term government holding facilities at great expense to the taxpayer.
In the 19th century, more than 2 million wild horses roamed the West. Today, there are less than 30,000. The Bureau of Land Management is dedicated to protecting our precious grasslands. However, while under its watch, we have lost 12.5 million acres of grazing, and wild herding regions have dropped 50%. Herds whose numbers once reached into the hundreds now are in the tens.
It's all a war of grass. Who gets the grass? Is the cattle going to get the grass, or these guys? The cattlemen want more of it, and these guys have to go in order for them to get it. It's that simple.
The number of acres that the BLM had to dedicate to the use of horses back in 1970 has been reduced by them to about half of what they had. So the territory the horses have available to them has been reduced significantly.
The BLM uses helicopters and other intimidating tactics to round up our wild horses and control their population. After the roundup, these wild horses are put on the standard horse adoption market. However, due to their lack of training and rogue nature, the majority of wild horses never get adopted. Once they are deemed unadoptable, they are sent to auction and eventually to slaughter. It made us wonder, is there anything else that can be taken away from the American horse?
Pro are typically used for women as they go into menopause to replace those hormones for symptomatic relief, including hot flashes, depression, fatigue, low libido, but it's used to replace the estrogen and progesterone, although they're not the same. But as you look at the studies and throughout the years, Premarin and Prempro have shown to cause breast cancer, cause heart disease, cause stroke and heart attack, while other hormone replacement therapies have not.
Premarin means pregnant mare's urine. And everybody always focused on the mares and how they were suffering and all that, or, you know. I said, let's take it and let's find out what is the residual effect of Premarin.
Last Chance for Animals conducted an investigation into the Premarin pharmaceutical industry. What they found was that approximately 40,000 mares per year were used to produce the hormone replacement drug Premarin. Harvested for their urine, the mares remain in stalls too small for them to turn around, attached to filthy, constraining urine collection devices. The horses are repeatedly impregnated within these confines and often have no protection from the cold concrete floor during the harsh Canadian winter. The amount of water given to these horses is restricted because water dilutes the urine, making it less profitable for the farmers. The horses' food supply is inadequate as well, and they rarely receive sufficient veterinary care. Most mares are never removed from the stalls and allowed to graze. Then, when they can no longer reproduce, they are sent to auction and eventually slaughter. When Last Chance for Animals investigation became public, the number of horses being used for Premarin decreased 50%. That was a victory, yes. But 20,000 horses still remain crippled in stalls on Premarin farms across Canada. And we cannot forget that 20,000 mares produce 20,000 foals. What happens to those baby horses?
It's usually 85, 90, 95% of these horses were all going to known killer buyers. The byproduct ends up as meat in Japan, Belgium, and France.
I don't think most doctors and patients know. They may hear of it, but I don't think they associate really how the drug is manufactured.
It's pregnant mare's urine. You just think the ick factor. I mean, you really want to consume urine?
Study after study after study has shown they are particularly dangerous, and it really should be malpractice to use Prempro.
The issues facing American horses are growing in severity with each day. However, out of such dire circumstances, there arise opportunities for people to make a difference, to become a voice for the voiceless, and to change the destiny of our equines. There are people and organizations all over this nation devoted to finding real solutions. People working exhausting hours at jobs whose only reward is often no more than a shared smile and peace of mind before bedtime. Horse rescue organizations and therapeutic centers exist to provide caring, enriching environments for horses that have been neglected, abused, abandoned, or are at risk of going to slaughter. These organizations understand the invaluable therapeutic gifts the horse has to offer and the life-changing impact the animal can have on human beings of all shapes, colors, and sizes.